Go to the cloud. All right, let me change the thingy here. We're going to do our participants. Good morning to those who have joined us. We're going to get started right away. What I'm doing at the present time is allowing for those who come in later to just come in without having to wait in the waiting room. So let me just change the setting here really quickly. I'm hoping everyone is doing well. The waiting room, and I'm about to share my screen. Just give me a second. Let's see. Here we are. All right. So good morning. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm going to make certain that I do one thing that I did not do consistently recently. I definitely didn't do this at the beginning of our last community update regarding the survey. What I'm actually doing is making certain that everyone who is here has access to this link, which is a link that I've been sharing even beyond these conversations, because it's very important that when a researcher is doing some work that's community, with the community voice, that we consistently ask community folks to give us feedback, to pose questions. So last evening in my graduate research course, I had my students review our research proposal and actually use that link to post their questions. These questions that I'm asking you all to possibly pose using this link are included in a running list of questions and then answers, so that we can, again, keep track of the kinds of questions that come about regarding the community's experiences and perceptions of the Baltimore City Police Department. So of course, the chat, of which I'm highlighting, and make sure I can paste it. Oops, now let me do it. Doing that, let me just unshare my screen, go into the chat. You guys will have this link. And those who actually watch this video also have access to this link because it's included in the invitation. Again, if you have questions, please use that link to post your questions. I'm actually going to begin at the beginning as usual. So today's discussion is about the importance of the research proposal. The research proposal is the blueprint, it is the script, it is the information that we've shared with, in this case, the Baltimore City Police Department consent decree monitors. It is the document that was, in fact, reviewed by the Department of Justice and the Baltimore City Police Department members themselves. And today's discussion is about the importance of the research proposal. It is probably very important for those who are not engaged themselves in conducting research, that they understand that we have to and will and consistently have followed the research proposal. We already know that we've been working with the BPD monitoring team. We recognize that this particular consent decree community survey comes out of the Institute for Urban Research at Morgan State. We have Morgan State students and community members who engage in the community's experience and perceptions of the Baltimore City Police Department survey via they're conducting the community interviews. We're acknowledging that in 2018, we initially, through IUR, the Institute of Urban Research, were able to respond to the request for a proposal for the community survey. And we actually were identified as the institution that would conduct this survey via IUR. In 2018, we did that. In 2020, we submitted another proposal for time 2, which gives more specifics about how the survey would how the survey would be conducted for time 2 of the community survey, which you currently see on the screen. Let me make sure I'm on the slideshow version of this, is the team itself, which includes myself. And at least 2 of those members are here, Aaliyah, the coordinator, and Tanea, graduate research assistant at Morgan State University. We have this team, we have translators and the like. Obviously, we also have community interviewers. We, just like on the actual proposal, We have a schedule that we are still following. I'll tell more about how the schedule plays itself out when we talk about the actual proposal, how the proposal came about, and the timeline for that. We are acknowledging that all of the possible participants were shared or given via the mail an invitation to partake in the community survey and a flyer postcard. So this is the visual for that. One of the things that is key in our proposal is that every member of our research team, including the interviewers, were to be certified to conduct human subject research via CITI certification. One of the things that we are taking to heart is that it is essential based upon our responsibility to human subjects, what we confirmed via the Institutional Review Board at Morgan State University, and what our proposal outlines, that the participants' information is kept private, confidential, and they are anonymity is maintained. We've already acknowledged that the survey has been translated into the SCARF languages: Spanish, Chinese, Arabic, Russian, and French. And at the present time, 2022, this is 2222, we are at part 1 of data collection, recruitment of participants. And I'm acknowledging here that where we are at part 1, part of the actual proposal outlines the fact that we had to exhaust the possibilities with the randomly selected addresses that we have identified for this survey. Part 1 of this survey is the random streets list, random addresses that we've identified. So we're still at part 1. I'm happy to report that there are 27 streets that we randomly selected in the fall of 2021. And just this past weekend, our recruiters completed the recruitment efforts for the 27 streets. We actually identified recruiters, a person who formerly helped to do recruitment and interviews for Time One, and Aaliyah, who's our coordinator, to pick up some of the work in terms of doing recruitment. So they're very familiar with this process. And thankfully, beginning January 26th and up until the 19th of February, they've been doing recruitment in 27 streets where they've knocked on doors. They've confirmed whether or not an address was a good address or an invalid address. There's also been a cross-check between the physical kind of experience of visiting a particular address and what we saw on Google Maps regarding whether an address was a valid address. So thankfully, as of the 19th of February, all of those addresses were visited, and we're in the process of now making a decision about next steps based upon what the proposal outlines as it relates to time two of this particular community survey. So I want to make sure that's part of our discussion now that we're looking at this particular screen. We're acknowledging that the recruitment goal is 600 participants, 600 persons who are eligible, 18 years of age or older, and live in Baltimore City. And what you see on the screen here is that there is a process where an invitation is sent out, and also an invitation is discussed via a one-on-one contact where we've been in the field very recently, considering the downward numbers regarding the Omicron variant, which was very debilitating for the survey team, actually. And then once there's some invitation via the mail or that in-field recruitment, we're confirming whether or not a person is 18 years of age or older and reports that they live in Baltimore City. And at the present time, we've been focused in on that random group, randomly selected participant group, which includes the random streets, which is 27 streets in Baltimore City, and the random addresses. So what you see is like the process that we would attempt to follow, we attempted to follow early on to identify persons using this random process. Random meaning that every person in a given population, given our random selection process, is given a fair chance of being included as a participant, and we're not making a decision about who can participate based upon like our own decision making. The random address is the process. The random street is the process. The part 2 of data collection, which would be purposive, has not begun as yet. Why? Because we've just exhausted the 27 streets as of this past Saturday in terms of when we visited all of these streets. We've knocked on these doors and we've just exhausted the possibilities with them by visiting those addresses, mailing out invitations at least 3 times. And now we're moving into mailing out another postcard to those addresses where persons did not answer the door. Where a person did not answer the door, we have to mail out another invitation for those particular addresses. Obviously, the ones that we've done interviews with, we don't have to revisit those at all. But then excluding the ones where the addresses are bad, like these addresses, there's no human present at a particular address. What we are going to be doing as we continue with part 1 of data collection is going back in to our random streets list with the addresses that were pulled in the fall of 2021 and doing another random selection using our random selection generator of addresses. And in going back through this process, still at part 1 of data collection and doing this recruitment with these new set of addresses. So this is like our following the proposal, making sure that we follow the script regarding these random streets, but now pulling another set of random addresses where we aren't at that 600 as of yet. Once we've done that, and again, once we look at the sample and look at whether or not they are reflective of the population, we already have demographics for the city, and I'm going to show that in the next screen. And we also recognize the hard to reach folks as well. We'll move into part 2, which we have not done yet, where we're identifying persons who may be hard to reach, and members of the LGBTQ, persons where English is not the primary language, persons who squeegee for living, and those who may identify as homeless. And again, we're looking at demographics that speak to the population of Baltimore that we follow via the US Census Quick Facts Guide. And this particular screen kind of highlights where we are, where we've been. These items in green is where we've been hanging out, random address sampling, Google mapping, and actual street canvassing, and identifying persons on those random streets who may be eligible and available to conduct an interview or to participate in an interview. We've been here. We have not moved into canvassing part 3, which is really part 2 of data collection, which is the purposive sample. We've discussed this consistently, that our participants, give me 1 second, I'll turn down the noise here, 1 second. We've acknowledged that we built in incentives compensating participants for their time with the goal of increasing the response rate. My research team has talked about the possibility of upping the incentive amount, possibly upping the incentive amount for those that we've already reached out to 3 times via email, via the mail. We've also visited a particular address and maybe offering, like doubling up on the incentive amount to kind of get those numbers for those persons via those random addresses. So that's something I haven't cleared or confirmed as yet. I have to go back into the budget and then remove something else in the budget to possibly help us get to the point of increasing the incentive amount. But that's still hasn't been confirmed. Okay, so we talked about this last time, where we just began. This is less than 4 weeks later, in January the 20th, 6, we just began actually recruiting persons in the field. Prior to January 26th, there was absolutely no in-field contact with possible participants. When the numbers were reduced regarding, were declining regarding Omicron exposure and or positive cases, when we began to be able to filter out some issues that we've had regarding our resources, we brought in a senior recruiter who was assisting Aaliyah, our coordinator, to actually be in the field to engage with participants, following the social distancing guidelines still, but recognizing that we are working towards increasing our response rates and engaging with community regarding this particular survey. And here we are discussing the importance of the research proposal and our following the protocols as outlined by the Institutional Review Board. One of the things that we recognize as researchers, social scientists, is that the world will not necessarily understand what it takes to carry out such a project. The world may not understand that, we're not just haphazardly knocking on doors. We're not haphazardly approaching people on a street, asking them to participate in a survey or to participate in an interview. Our charge is to follow what we've been trained to do, and in my case, what I train students to do, or train researchers in general to do, which is follow the requirements that are outlined by an entity like the Institutional Review Board. Morgan State University, just like many other organizations, have their own Institutional Review Board. Because this is being conducted under the Institute for Urban Research, I'm a faculty member at Morgan State University in the Department of Sociology, Anthropology, Criminology, and Criminal Justice. I had the responsibility of writing a proposal and then taking that proposal and sending the details of the proposal to the Institutional Review Board. I'm completing an application so that the IRB can approve our conducting human subject research. It is essential that any researcher recognizes their role as a researcher in the protection of human subjects. Hence, IRBs kind of help with the vetting of a particular initiative, and in this case, the community survey. What this means is the following. Each participant is read in this case, a consent statement that allows them to consent to participate. It confirms that their participation is voluntary. They're not being forced to participate. It acknowledges that at any time over the course of data collection, which is the community survey interview, they can decline continuation of participation. It also confirms that we've been given an IRB number that it says that this particular project was approved by the Institutional Review Board. The IRB process and the IRB application speaks to the importance of the research proposal. Without a research proposal, you won't necessarily have an application to submit to the IRB. When you write a research proposal, you're writing it in such a way that all the possibilities that you can be faced with over the course of data collection, they can be covered. And you're not unorganized, or you are actually organized in your process and progress throughout the time frame that you're actually collecting this data. So I'm acknowledging here that in May of 2021, time 2 of data collection was in fact approved by the Morgan State University Institutional Review Board. We've done everything that we're supposed to do to make certain that our project was IRB approved. And what I'm sharing here is that, again, a layperson may not necessarily understand the rigors of doing human subject research. We want to make certain that folks recognize that there are some rigors regarding this process. For example, when you've gotten an invitation to attend this community update, one of the things that's discussed is that this proposal was vetted over and over and over and over again, following a particular process involving some stakeholders. So March of 2020, the research proposal was presented for the time 2 data collection. We know that then April of 2020, some of the nuances of this particular proposal were modified given the this COVID-19 pandemic. So that it led itself to discussions about, well, how will this carry out? One of the things we decided is that we would not be interviewing persons face to face like we did for time one. We would actually set it up and have a budget that allowed for a Zoom interview and or a phone call, which could be FaceTime, WhatsApp, or a general phone call. And all that was kind of massaged from March 2020 through September of 2020, where the proposal was vetted. So there was conversations with consultants with the Department of Justice, persons who work with the Department of Justice, the Baltimore City Police Department, and obviously the monitors who make the decision on an actual proposal and what it will look like, in this case, for time 2 of data collection. So that vetting took place for about a year. So from September of 2020 until August of 2021, the research proposal was vetted. The research proposal was like already approved via IRB in May of 2021, but I would honestly say August of 2021, some of the questions, the back and forth regarding what does this sample look like and or how are persons recruited, they were kind of like finalized, and I think doubts were eliminated by August of 2021. And then in September of 2021, there was an actual training of members of the research team, training where members of the team were required to be CI/TI certified and also attend the training if they were going to be doing or going to be community interviews. And from September 2021 until the present time, we have been following the approved research proposal. We cannot go against the research proposal. We cannot make something up new or do something different beyond the research proposal, because as scientists, we follow the requirements. And one of the things I often do with students and others is to give comparable examples. So for example, if a surgeon is going into surgery and he or she is responsible for removing gallstones, they follow the process for how this particular patient's gallstones will be removed. And they also have plans in place with the surgery team for what happens once they go in to remove those gallstones. They're going to follow a script. They can't just make up something because it feels a certain way at that time. They're following the script for this particular patient. It's the same thing social scientists do when we do human subject research. And what happened after, or just prior to the proposal and the application being sent to the Institutional Review Board, we have what's called a final research proposal. If anyone would like to have a copy of this, and I'll try to make like a PDF version of this available on your question and answer piece on that link I've shared with you all. We have this final research proposal that highlights who the Institute for Urban Research is at Morgan State University. It talks about myself, the principal investigator, acknowledges the methodology that we have to follow in order to carry out this work, and data collection, the notion of interviews. Even though we've been recruiting participants in person with the COVID-19 protocols in place, we're still doing actual virtual interviews. So an interview can be scheduled, but then you have a virtual interview scheduled where there's no contact for that half-hour period. The recruitment, I would say maybe 2 minutes tops. The recruiter is out having a conversation with an individual with their masks on, socially distanced, physically distanced, and then they schedule an interview. But the actual interview is about a half hour. This proposal acknowledges the random street sample and how the streets were selected from the number of streets in the city of Baltimore. Proposal also highlights how invitations were mailed out beginning in September. And now we're moving through doing the exhaustive list, the exhaustive search, the exhaustive recruitment of persons from those randomly selected addresses. It then goes on to talk about the possibility of, well, in addition to the addresses, if there is interaction with a person who happens to be on a randomly selected street, those persons can so too be recruited. Again, this proposal was approved and vetted over the course of a year. Then it talks about after part one of data collection has been exhausted, you move into the purposive and convenience sample. Again, which means you're identifying persons who were hard to reach, that they were not reflected in the sample participants for part one, but they are possibly hard to reach, and we want to make certain those voices are included. So that's included in the proposal. The proposal also talks about the training, as I've already mentioned, the instrument that is used to collect the data, the analysis, the capacity for this project to be carried out, and that's that. In terms of the importance of the research proposal, we have to follow the research proposal. We cannot go against that, because we wouldn't then be social scientists. We may very well be acting, and we're not doing that. So I'm hoping this was informative for all those who have joined in. One of the responsibilities I have is to continue to update the monitors. Obviously, part of my responsibility is to engage with members of the community. That's why we have these community updates. This particular discussion has been obviously recorded. So anyone who would like to take a look at this beyond this moment, where they weren't necessarily available for this live discussion, can take a look at this particular video. And you'll notice that each person who's here will get an invitation for the next community update, which will be 2 weeks from today on March the 8th at 11:30 a.m. We are going to be sharing specific details via a quick email to members of the monitoring team who are likely to have questions. Everyone else who was here, though, I'm going to post the link again to the question form. If you have a question or comment about the community survey, please do use that link. This helps us to, follow the timeline that we have for this community update. It also helps us to organize those questions. So with that said, I'm concluding this conversation. Use that link. If you haven't been able to access, I'm keeping it up on the screen, and then I'll be logging off at the 12 o'clock hour. All the best to everyone.